And at half-time, you probably had everything you wanted out of the game, had things on your terms, but it looked like you ran out of gas in the second half. Is that how it sort of looks like now when you reflect on it?
Yeah, obviously the second quarter, was some really good basketball. I thought we found a good shape on offense, and we exploited, one play and kept going back to it and found different wrinkles in it, and put ourselves in a great position at halftime. Yeah, coming out of halftime, obviously Finn Delaney with a little bit of foul trouble. The medical staff told us Shaylee wasn't to play anymore. And, we couldn't throw it in the ocean. Credits to Perth. They turned up their defence. They rebounded way better. And obviously, getting to the foul line 43 times compared to 13, they played one-on-one and were able to kind of go through our body and find ways to get to the foul line. But, we have 15 more shots than them because we couldn't get to the foul line. We could make a shot, and they rebounded well. So, not going to overanalyze the game. There looked like there's some fatigue there in the second half and a little less aggression, and and then I thought that showed in some plays for us that we just weren't on the same page either, and that's a little bit of mental fatigue that we quite didn't get organised well enough.
I think 25 more shots. So
25? Yeah.
That even more, but
yeah.
I feel like it's similar to what we saw from Tassie on Thursday, where they were brave, and it feels like tonight you were equally brave because you had Shady was hurt, couldn't come back on. Chris has been playing coach the last month. Jesse probably shouldn't have played either, but he still comes out and puts in a great effort. And against the odds, you just gave everything that you had to give.
Yeah, happy. Obviously, extremely pleased with Jesse. His ability to. One, we didn't know what he was getting on the plane. He took a later flight to recover a little bit more. And then, saw him at dinner last night and got off the flight and was like, oh, you're moving around. There's a 50% chance of you playing. And then at shoot around today, it's like, oh, he might be actually able to contribute. And then, for him to, kind of put that aside and just go and play the way he plays, I thought it was a super brave effort from him. CG carrying his injury and just couldn't quite get back to, the form that he wanted to get to as well. So, I'm proud of our group. And it was it's one of those years where we had the highest highs with the way that we started. We had some pretty bad lows, and we got back to this point where everyone was on the same page. And I thought, our best was good enough to really challenge. But credit JR and Perth, and Joe really wanted that game tonight, and you could just see it and those guys really stepped up.
What is sort of in this specific game, the way it panned out, dominant first half, fourth second half, sum up your season?
Yeah, I did mention that to our group in review of the season and different things, but I don't. There was different reasons. Obviously, injury was a factor in our season as well as in that second half, and it showed again tonight. And so, but I like to step up with different guys throughout the year. We got a lot of minutes into a lot of different people. Yeah, he's been carrying this hamstring and he's returning, but he just tightened up again, and so the risk of a re-injury was pretty high.
What does the future look like for Shane? It looks like, fingers crossed, he's over his concussion problems that he had, but now it's his hamstring that's been ongoing this season. What do you get him to do in the off-season now to try to hopefully get a good run at it?
Yeah, I'm not going to give you the whole rundown of what our medical staff have already told me about how they're, what his off-season looks like, but they've already planned it out in an extensive way. He never had a re-injury of a hamstring. He had 4 spots, 2 on each leg, and so never a re-injury. And so there's some weaknesses there, obviously, that we've got to get him back to full strength. And we know how dynamic he is when he can get out there and defend and push the basketball for us.
You mentioned Joe, you're doing well. You've been coaching massive games. Is that as well as you've seen him play playoff game before?
Yeah, I thought he was great, and he's such a competitor. I was mad at him last time we played him. He gave me a really poor handshake after, and he hates losing, and I was mad at him. But tonight he gives me a hug and tells me he loves me and stuff. And so I wish him well. Anytime we've had a player like that, we've got a good relationship, and I absolutely wish him well in the finals and hope he can continue to play like that.
How does it sit exiting the tournament, the competition at this stage now, considering the start of the season, considering the injuries? How does it sit with you exiting here?
I think any time you exit the season and you don't walk away with a championship, it feels pretty much the same. You want to play in that last game of the year, and you want to walk away the victor. And so, we weren't good enough, for a number of different reasons this year. And so, you feel flat about not being able to play our best basketball, and you always put a lot of that on yourself as a coach. Did we do the right things? Did we put them in the right positions? Did we play the right people, the right combinations? And I'll continue to evaluate that for what happened in the second half of the year. Was our mindset right? How do we approach every game? But we had a pretty resilient group that found a way to bounce back, and I think I'm really proud of that.
Who wins it from here, Dean? I know that's a hard question to ask for a coach who's just bowed out, but who wins it? Who do you like?
I think any championship that I've been a part of, there's always people that desire the championship more than anyone and are super hungry. I see that in the Kings right now, and I see that with Delhi and whatever, how many minutes he plays or whatever, just the drive to say, what we wanted to have this year after losing a couple of championships, he has that right now to say, I'm carrying this team, I don't think he's going to do everything not to let them lose. And so there's that part about the Kings, but this is a really talented team. And their best is good enough to go ahead and win it. And Joe and Du and Windler and obviously Duke, I thought had a bigger impact on the game, and I think he can continue to impact it. The other side of it, Southeast has got a style that's a little bit different to everybody, and in a 3-game, 5-game series, can they put that much pressure on everybody? And they've got to get through Bryce right now. So I'm going to sit on the fence right now, but there'll be someone that stands up on one of these teams that just wants this championship more than anyone.
How do you reflect? You had a couple of wins with the players, so this is a season where, to sum it up briefly, it had absolutely everything that a season could possibly have. You start so well. You go through a slump, you get things back on track before the finals, and you get to this point, and you never really have Shea. You've got Chris who's in and out for a lot of the year. You go through what you did a month ago, which I can't remember any other coach having to deal with in a season. How do you reflect on that right now?
You're bouncing around a lot of things, and you go back to playing the first NBA game in Australia and being super competitive and doing good things for the league, about bringing an NBA team to Australia. So, it started there. You go on the journey, with Dash as a next star, veterans, how they manage their bodies. I'm really proud of my own staff to say, I'll go away with the Boomers, and I really trusted, those guys, and they grew. I get sick. Reece Carter takes over for a couple of games. They got some amazing opportunities. But as a club, again, I heard Scotty talk about, his culture standing up, and I thought, when you're down, losing games and struggling after playing really well, you need your culture to stand up, and I thought there was a lot of leaders in our team that really stood up to help get us back on track.
On the topic of Dash, he had a number of very high impact plays tonight, turning defense into offense. Can you kind of give a comment on what his impact has been defensively this season?
Yeah, I thought those 2 playoff games, I thought he was great. The other night played 18 minutes. He didn't hit the scoreboard a little bit, but tonight I just thought aggressive on the break. We put him on Windley. He hadn't really guarded him too much. We kind of had him more on the 2 guards in the series, and I thought he blew some things up early on, and I thought it was just a more aggressive offensive movement from him tonight, and so to him to start 2 playoff games and play 18 minutes and 15 minutes, and I think he might have led us in plus minus tonight when he was out there. So he's, for an 18-year-old, there's not many people starting in playoff games like he's done.
Dean, one of the offensive plays that killed them in the first half was Walker coming off that down screen from Chris Golly, and you got a good look at it every single time, and you ran a 1 for him in the third. Did you stop going to it just because that's how the game sort of unfolded, or why did you?
Yeah, we put people in different spots. We did want to look at a couple of different things, but I thought we got to some similar action with Tanner and Milt, coming out of the corners, and we were kind of a little bit passive. The first half I thought we just made real quick decisions. Are we getting downhill? Are we dumping off? Or are we making a play? And I thought we were a little passive at the top there to go ahead and make that decision. So, yeah, we got to the same action, but we just, the decision making at the end of it. And again, credit to Perth, they did some different things in the way that they clogged it up a little bit more as well.
Right, no hands up online, so that'll do it.
All right, cheers. Thanks.